angels are in place.
Yeah.
The light. Take it home.
Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Wynn Irwin, and I have the pleasure of welcoming all of you here today. I'm actually thrilled to be back here in person because I've really missed my spiritual home. I'm a fourth-generation Fountain Streeter. I actually came back to the church after about 20 years, and I've been here ever since. I've had the pleasure to serve in the church in many capacities, the foundation board, the governing board member, and currently I'm treasurer of the church. In my wallet, I carry a piece of our church, a quote from Duncan Littlefair, that really speaks to me as to why I am here and my attachment to our community, and I'd like to share that with you today. Many of you will find this very familiar. This is indeed a day which God has made. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. And let us count our many blessings. Let us be grateful for the capacity to see, feel, hear, and understand. Let us be grateful for the incredible gift of life. And let us especially be grateful for the ties of love which bind us together, giving dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all our days. Welcome to Fountain Street Church. We're glad you're here.
Kat Hapner, and I will call to worship comes to us from Reverend Kimberly Tomzik Garland, place of belonging and caring. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so you began seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to the possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home, welcome to worship.
Good morning. My name is Jean Bailey, and I will be reading this morning's Ancient and Contemporary Witnesses. The Ancient Witness this morning comes to us as a contemporary framing of the Beatitudes called Blessed Are the Queer, written by H.P. Rivers. Hear what the ancient spirit is saying to us this morning. Blessed are the wanderers seeking affirmation. Blessed are the worshipers praying from closets, pulpits, pews, and hardship. Blessed are the lovers of leaving family and familiarity, leaving tables where love is not being served. Blessed are those who stay. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the queer disciples of truth, living, breathing, sacred reflections of divine love. The contemporary witness comes to us from the reading Mattering by Dr. Mark Hicks. Hear what the contemporary spirit is saying to us this morning. My father asked if I am gay. I asked, does it matter? He said, no, not really. I said, yes. He said, get out of my life. I guess it mattered. My friend asked why I talk about race so much. I asked, does it matter? He said, no, not really. I told him, yes. He said, you need to get that chip off your shoulder. I guess it mattered. My neighbor asked why I put that ramp up to my front door. I said, does it matter? He said, no, not really. I told him because it made my life easier. He said, is there a way to make it less obvious? I guess it mattered. A member of my church asked why I liked gospel music. I asked, does it matter? She said, no, not really. I told her that it connects me to my Southern Christian childhood. She said, I think you're in denial about your oppression. I guess it mattered. My God asked me, do you love yourself? I said, does it matter? She said, yes. I said, how can I love myself? I am gay, Latino, disabled, and a Christian in a hostile climate. She said, "That is the way I made you. Nothing will ever matter again."
Thank you, Wynn and Kat and Jean. I have another story for us this morning about welcome and about mattering. It's the story of someone called Hosea Ballou. This story takes place, over 200 years ago in a small house in a small town on the edge of the forest with big trees in the state of New Hampshire. And there lived a small boy whose name was Hosea Ballou. Hosea was just like other children in many ways. He loved to learn and he loved to do new things. He was always asking questions about what and how and why, and where are the parents in the room who have heard those questions too many times. He liked to play. He liked to play hide and seek with his 9 other siblings. And he liked to play word games inside when it was raining and tag outside after it rained when maybe it wasn't sunny yet. In the winter, he would jump in snow drifts. In the summer, he would jump in the creek. In the fall, into leaf piles. But spring was his favorite season for jumping. Because in spring, it would rain and rain and rain and make the biggest mud puddles ever. Hosea, like many other children, loved mud. He liked it when it was soft and squishy. He liked it when it was thick and sticky. If it didn't rain quite enough, that wasn't a problem. He could carry water in a bucket from the creek and make his own mud. He liked to poke it with sticks. He liked to build mud pies and mud dams. He liked to take off his shoes until it got in between his toes and all the way up to his ankles. Yes, Hosea loved mud. But as you might imagine, not everybody shared Hosea's penchants for mud, particularly the other members of his family. Hosea's mother had died when he was not quite 2, and so his older siblings helped take care of that bundle of children. His eldest sibling, who did the laundry and washed the clothes in the laundry basket, didn't exactly appreciate scrubbing off all that mud. And off of not just Hosea, but everything he would get it onto afterwards on his way to the laundry basket. Then his other sibling, who was in charge of washing the children, got a little tired of having the bathwater get dirty so darn fast. His eldest siblings asked his father, "Father, please tell Hosea to stop playing in the mud." "Hosea," his father said sternly, "you should not play in the mud." "Why?" Hosea asked. Remember that part about how he liked asking questions? "Well, because," and he put on that preacher voice from his Baptist time, and he said, "Just as we try to live a good life, to be kind to one another and follow God's plan, we try to stay clean." "Yes, Father," Hosea said, and he did try to stay clean. But it wasn't easy. I mean, he stopped jumping in puddles, and he stopped making mud pies, and he stopped taking his shoes off, but he still had to go to the chicken coop, and he still had to go down to the creek to get water, and I mean, mud just, happens. Well, Hosea's older siblings didn't like that mud just happens, and so they went to his father again and said, "Father, please tell Hosea to stop playing in the mud." Hosea, You must not play in the mud. Yes, Father. He was sad because he had truly tried not to get dirty, well, most of the time anyway. Are you angry with me, Father? I'm disappointed, Hosea, and I'm a little angry. Hosea hung his head and he kicked at the dirt in his toes. And then he looked up and he said, "Do you still love me?" Hosea's father sighed and said, "Of course I still love you. I will always love you, Hosea, no matter what you do. Even if I get muddy again? Yes. Even if I get really, really, really muddy? Yes. Even if I get mud all the way up to my eyebrows and between my fingers and my toes and in my hair? Yes. Even then. But remember, Hosea, please try to stay clean." Hosea went outside. "I'll remember." And he did. And he grew up, and as a teenager, he started to ask that Baptist preacher of a father some questions. "Father, how can it be that our church believes that God will only let 1,000 people into heaven, even if that 1,000 people lead good lives?" His father didn't have a good answer for that. Some more years went by, and Hosea went to his father again. "If I had the power to create a living creature, and I knew that that creature would have a miserable life, would suffer and die, and then would go to hell and be miserable forever, and I went ahead and I created it anyway, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? And would I be good or bad?" As you might imagine, his father didn't have a good answer for that question either. Hosea had to find his own answers, and so he did. He read the Bible and many other books about religious peoples and about God, and he went to some Universalist churches, and he asked some more questions. And at the age of 19, he remembered his father's story, that his father would always love him, no matter how muddy or clean or everything in between he ever was. And he came to preach in universal salvation. Not only that everyone was saved, but that everyone was loved. "How can you believe that?" one day over dinner, I imagine his Baptist father asked him. "How can you believe that God will let bad people into heaven?" "Because, Father, I remember what you told me when I was a child. I believe that even if God is disappointed or a little angry, that God will always love them, no matter how muddy they are. So no matter what mud finds its way into your week or your life, know that you are loved."
Here's a medley of 3 American fiddle tunes: Julianne Johnson, Dubuque, and Spotted Pony. Here's your 4 count.
Right. Well, it's a different kind of week around here. People have the week off. Our organists have the week off. Our pianists have the week off. Our choir has the week off. I am so grateful for Hawks and Owls that enrich our music today. So grateful for all of you. And I thought, well, if it's already going to be an off week, why not try something different? So, I've been doing a lot of storytelling around here, and stories are powerful. You might have picked it up last week. The stories are also powerful as a teaching and learning tool from a pedagogical lens, which is my old life. It's a way of activating schema, as they say, which is a fancy way of saying it's just a way of activating your prior knowledge, your prior understanding, things you might have experienced before. So I'm telling a big, long story this morning, a personal story, and yet it might be a way of activating your schema or your prior knowledge or maybe your prior experience. So I invite you to be comfortable. Sit back for a story. Chapter 1, let's talk on the phone about sin. I was standing in the front office the first time it happened. I was standing there in the front office when a young, a little bit uncomfortable looking, if not entirely awkward looking, young couple came in. And a young man said, "How would I go about talking to a pastor around here?" Well, the office manager gestured to me and said, "Actually, there's one right here." I could tell he was startled, but it didn't stop him. He said, "So how can you go about having gay flags hanging on the front of your church? What do you think the Bible has to say about that?" Okay, it wasn't the first time that someone's accosted me about said issue, but it was the first time in this church. And I felt this pit form in my stomach. So, a breath. I said, "Actually, I'd love to talk to you about this sometime, but not right now." why don't you make an appointment with me? And I'm just trying to get out of it, right? And why don't you make an appointment? And we can talk about it another time. Well, he never scheduled an appointment, and that was the first time it happened. The second time it actually happened in this beautiful space that we're all sitting in, and it was another young couple, and I was helping them plan their wedding ceremony, and I could tell the groom was entirely distracted. He finally cleared his throat. And without looking at me in the eyes, he said, "So what about the decorations?" "Your decorations?" I asked. I was genuinely confused. "No, like the church's decorations. Will those be taken down for the wedding?" Slowly, that familiar knot of dread formed in my stomach again. And I could tell what he was getting at. But I played coy and I beat around the bush. "Oh, you mean like the paintings in the hallway? No, those typically stay." "Oh, do you mean like the bench and the chairs and the table? I mean, they're kind of flexible, but not really." Until he finally cut me off and said, "I noticed you have some decorations hanging out front, and those need to come down before our wedding." Over my 3 short but action-packed years here in this church, these kinds of interactions have become countless. And they've ranged from aggressive emails to physical letters without a return address or a name, and sometimes even aggressive and provocative voicemails on my office phone. Just this summer, somehow somebody got my cell phone number, and a very concerned West Michigan resident wanted to let me know how disgusted she was with me and my so-called church. After a lengthy litany of names I would never repeat here, she concluded with, "You make me sick just talking to you," and hung up. Not a week later, I got a Facebook message from another concerned West Michigan resident who had seen pictures of me online. I had officiated his nephew's gay marriage wedding, as he called it. "I see you went to seminary, but not a good one. If you don't know that it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve." How original. So I wasn't that surprised when 2 weeks ago I got another voicemail, this time on my office phone, from someone who had been in the church for Art Prize. And he was a little concerned about some of the art inside of our church, but he was even more concerned that nothing about our church said we were a church. So he researched us, found out we're not a church. We're a cult. We're a cult. And he finally came around to the home base of his issues with me and our church, and he said, "You know what the problem is with you so-called liberal churches? You are too afraid to talk about sin. That's your real problem. You're afraid to talk about sin," he said. You know what? Wasn't entirely wrong. Chapter 2. I am super duper gay. Spoiler alert number 1, I am super duper gay. Spoiler alert number 2, I have always known it. As a young child, I knew I was so different, and I knew I did not fit in, and I knew I was super duper gay. Please excuse my 1990s stereotypes, but the reality was that I wanted to play house, I wanted to play Barbies, and I wanted to play dress up. I wanted to enact role plays where I was the provocative mother to my friends, the villainous witch to my neighbors, and a damsel in distress princess high on the playground at recess. Ever the last one to be picked on a kickball team, I wanted to make art and create music. I wanted to study home plan catalogs and real estate magazines, and I wanted to spend time talking to the grown-ups, especially if they were women, and especially if it involved gossip. As a 5-year-old, my favorite movie, no joke, was The Sound of Music. As a 6-year-old, I had taken the pom-poms off of my training wheel bicycle and used them for real pom-poms, and as a 7-year-old, it was clear to me that all of my friends would be girls. And in an era where Will and Grace and The Ellen Show and RuPaul were becoming a part of our cultural fabric, I saw myself in them and in their stories, and I knew that I was indeed super duper gay. And when I heard those distant news stories about the fight for civil rights in San Francisco, somehow in the depths of my young soul, I knew they were talking about me too. When the Michigan Pride Parade would happen every year in Lansing, where our family lived, and queers from all over the state would come and march and celebrate, it felt dangerously close to my personhood. And when Matthew Shepard was brutally murdered in an anti-gay terrorism incident, I knew that I was one of him, even if I was too scared to tell anyone in my life about it. Oh yes, I knew a thing about being super gay. You know what else I knew a lot about? Sin. Chapter 3. Sinner, sinner, chicken dinner. The 90s and the 2000s were a brutal time for queer children and youth to come of age. The influence of evangelicism was rising feverishly, particularly after 9/11, and the issue of LGBTQ and, oh my gosh, I knew that was a mouthful, LGBTQ, inclusion and equity, was at the dead center of the religious and political debate. And it just so happened to be when my coming of age was cradled. Put yourself at a classic Americana dinner table in the 90s, complete with chicken dinner, the side dishes, and all the accoutrements. Chicken was huge in the 90s for some reason, and it made for such a wholesome and loving and lovely and safe image. Every evening, our family would turn on the news after we were done eating. That was our family ritual. And we would listen night after night to the national debate over my existence, or at least that's how it felt to a terrified adolescent. Don't ask, don't tell. The Defense of Marriage Act, 1 million moms frothing at the mouth over a JCPenney ad, and one attack after another on queer folks around the nation, and an endless litany of news stories and commentators and interviews and sound bites of people openly talking about the one thing I wanted to keep a secret. And I would sit there at the dinner table praying to any God that would listen that the news story would just end. Praying that anytime I heard the word gay or equality or LGBTQ or rights, my face wouldn't move or my body wouldn't flinch in such a way that gave away my most closely guarded secret. And even though my family was only modestly religious at the time and barely involved in church, I knew the narrative. I knew who was in, I knew who was out, I knew the rules, how I was expected to play by them, and what would happen if I didn't. I knew that something about me made me worthy of endless teasing in middle school, and that same very thing made me worthy of living an eternity of life in hell and in torture. I knew that as I was not enough or worthy of love, because I knew all about sin. Ironically, I ended up working in churches at a very young age as an accompanist to choirs and an organist to congregational singing, and I wrestled with being a part of this story that hated me so much, and consequently, I wrestled with hating myself even more. During my freshman year at Grand Valley, I was already out of the closet, as they say, and I was serving as an accompanist to a church here in West Michigan, actually here in Grand Rapids. And one day it came up, or it came out, if you will, that yes, I'm gay. I told the choir director. I don't think I said I was like super duper gay, but I definitely told her I was gay. And a few days later, I got this bizarrely friendly, West Michigan, email from the church, letting me know they had some wonderful news for me. They had found someone to replace me. When I responded asking what they were talking about, the choir director responded by saying, "Christopher, when you told us you were committed to living a life in sin, we assumed that was your way of letting us know you were no longer working for us. Thank you so much for your service and good luck in school." A few years later, I was a student teacher in a local public school district, and I was removed from my teaching assignment by Grand Valley without any explanation. But I wasn't totally surprised because the cooperating teacher had been pretty demeaning from day one. I kid you not, she literally gave me a second grade student's desk to sit at with a second grade student's chair. She wouldn't let me do anything but make photocopies and organize her cupboards. But I assumed, or maybe I hoped, or maybe I convinced myself that she didn't like me for personality reasons. Well, as it turns out, just 3 days into my placement, she told my university site supervisor that she suspected I might be a practicing homosexual, possibly living in sin, and it didn't seem appropriate that I be around children. While I'm grateful that Grand Valley knew to pull me out of a harmful situation, it did not negate that once again I had this ongoing framing of sin and my relationship to it. And more so than even my adolescence, it affirmed the ongoing narrative within me that I was not enough and that both my inner and outer world were not to be true. Chapter 4, let's start at the very beginning. That's a reference to the Sound of Music. Everyone knows where it all began. It's literally the oldest story in the book, at least chronologically speaking. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that for the majority of us in this sacred space, we inherited some form of this story of sin at a very young age as it was told to us from the Garden of Eden. The story of two naughty sinners who have it all, but they go for the one thing they're not supposed to have, and it's all her fault. You do not need to grow up in a religious home or in a spiritual community to know this story, and to know this story is to know the violent, toxic, and oppressive theology and ideology that grips our world today as a result of it. Often we call this story the fall, and it's this pervasive idea that God's vision for a perfect world came crashing down when evil Eve ate that forbidden fruit. Such a bad girl and such an easy target on which to place the blame. The fall, as we have inherited it as a framing of sin, is this poisonous foundation for the systems and the institutions that marginalize the most vulnerable, that exploit the already oppressed and control the very beings of every one of us as we try to navigate a world that still espouses this right and wrong, black and white, light and dark, in and out, good and bad, virtuous and evil, sinful and saintly, binary manifestation of power. It is this understanding of sin that continues to be one of the most powerful tools of the oppressor, and it is this same framing of sin that dominated my life and defined who I was, or at least who I thought I was. And in my mind, I thought I was worthless. And sure, there are tons of other biblical stories that can cause harm in our contemporary world. Texts and passages that are used as weapons in the arsenal of racism and homophobia and transphobia and xenophobia and every other evil that is rooted in fear and pride. But is this very first framing of sin, taken from this very first human story in the Bible, that sets the tone for how we interpret all of the rest of it. So here we are, with this ancient story overlaying the contemporary interpretations that we have today. And we see it as a sign of obedience and compliance and power dynamics. Don't do this or else. Behave or else. Do as I say or else. You must obey my power and my authority or else. But there is another framing of this story, and it's one that has freed me. I have come to embrace it. The framing of liberation and hope, a framing of freedom and connection, and it is a framing so universal that I believe all of us will find freedom in it. See, we know all about that evil serpent tempting Eve with eternal life. You'll be like God, the serpent tempts. Eve falls, she sins. What if the fall is not because she bites into the fruit, but instead actually it's in that moment where in the blink of an eye, in a split second, in the moment that's easy to miss, Eve forgets, or she chooses not to believe, or she simply can't see that she is already like God. What if we offered more compassion to Eve's humanness and recognized that she didn't see that she was already like God and that God was already within her? What if that's the fall? What if that's the sin? Deep in this very first human interaction in the early Christian myths is a story of a presumably young woman who doesn't believe she's already enough. She falls victim to the serpentine lies that said, "You are not enough. You are not beloved as you are. You are not loved by God. You are not made in the image of God. You won't be worthy unless. In the telling of this story that we've inherited, we see God telling Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree as a divine mandate of obedience. But what if instead this very first message from God was God affirming human beings were already enough as they are in their godliness and in their God-likeness? In my years of becoming and becoming out, I have finally found liberation in this ancient story as a painful reminder how easy it is to be like Eve, to be convinced of the serpentine narrative that I'm not enough as I am, to be fully human, to experience the fullness of my humanity. I suspect that many of you know Eve's narrative in your own lives too. Chapter 5, the Eve in me affirms the Eve in you. Let's make it clear that Eve is not the problem, nor was eating the forbidden fruit, and nor was breaking the rules or disobeying God's authority. The problem, the fall, the sin that has plagued my life was the sin of worthlessness and self-denial and self-hatred. The sin that I have struggled with and struggle to this very moment, and even in this very moment, is living in an inner and outer world in which I am told I am not enough. I tell myself I'm not enough, and that the divine spirit is outside of my humanness, and I choose to actually believe that. I know Eve's struggle, and without asking you to raise your hands or identify yourselves, I believe that many, if not most, if not all of you, know her struggle as well. Every single week, it is a deeply dark and difficult struggle for me to get into this pulpit. Not because you have given me reason to believe that I am unsafe or unworthy of this intimate space we share, but because I still hear the ancient serpent's lies that say, I am not enough, and I believe it. I have moments to this very day where, as a happily married, fully out gay man, I don't want to hold my husband's hand in public or express my vulnerability to the world because I still hear the ancient serpent's whisper that says, I am not fully holy enough in this world. And I still struggle to bring the fullness of my being to my relationships, my colleagueships, my family, even to you, because I still distract myself reaching for that proverbial fruit rather than believing I am beloved and that belovedness abides within me. The irony of a complete stranger berating me in a voicemail and telling me that I am too afraid to talk about sin is that he is not completely incorrect. Though I doubt that he and I would agree at every level or see eye to eye on my interpretation of sin, I will admit that I don't want to talk about it because it is an intimate and pervasive part of my life, and I suspect yours too. But that in itself feels part of this paradoxical and toxic and self-denying cycle, which is precisely why I am coming out, or be coming out to you, if you will, this morning. I am coming out to you as someone who fully, readily, and painfully sees this pattern of the fall within himself and recognizes that in this church community, many of us see this in ourselves as well. The Eve in me affirms the Eve. The epilogue, the coming out of the closet of sin. Marianne Williamson once suggested that our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God, and your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it is in all of us. As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence helps liberate. On her own, Eve did not come to the conclusion that she was not enough. As humans, we do not lose our godliness, our holiness, and our belovedness in a vacuum. It is learned, it is affirmed, and then it is confirmed in the spaces of systemic evil. That it must be our shared work and our shared responsibility and our shared commitment as a faith community to embody and to speak out the opposite. To speak out against these sins of self-denial and the systems that affirm them. And to be truly a place that not only welcomes the vulnerable, broken, and hurting, but also affirms their sacredness, their inherent dignity, and their belovedness. So as we go this morning, and I stand here still processing my own pain and professing to you my own hope, I also offer you my prayers for each of you and for this church. For as long as there's a Fountain Church, I pray that we will indeed be a community of faith that does everything in our power to stop people from sinning. I pray that we will commit ourselves to ending the sin of self-hatred and self-doubt. I pray that we will be a community that boldly decrees the sin of self-worthlessness and self-denial. And I pray that we will be a cathedral of love and a temple to peace that relentlessly pushes the belief that the only road from sin is through experiencing the fullness of life, through being fully human, loving ourselves, and loving one another. I pray that we see that this reality cannot be fully realized as long as the systems of homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, racism, misogyny, classism, colonialism, oppression, exploitation, marginalization, greed, and hatred exist in our world, in our nation, in our city, and yes, in our churches. That means we must cry out against the sins of those systems too, and I pray that we do. Friends, coming out of the closet is not a one-off event, it is a cycle and it is a pattern. There are parts of us that don't come out right away, and other pieces we push back in there as we buy into the myth that we're not enough. So my prayer is that each of us and all of us see the closets in which we abide and the pieces of us that still are back inside of them. I pray that as each of us comes out of the closets of shame and the closets of self-worthlessness and the closets of insecurity, we might also help open the door for others. Invite them out. Take their hands and journey with them as they do. Please let me say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Constantly reopening the door for me. Persistently inviting me out. Taking my hand on this journey of becoming. So.
We have a pair of traditional American melodies. The first one's called Bound to Have Some Fun, which we need a lot more of in the world. And the second one is called Winder Slide. Here's a 4 count.
are here. And you can only be here, and you can only be you. So find yourself, free yourself in your body as it is right now. Breathe deep. Feel the presence of those around you and the spirit within you. The chair that holds you up, the ground that supports you, and the womb of life that embraces you. And then breathe. Let that breath connect you to the ancestors who went before you, to those within and beyond this space, to those who will come after us. Let it wash over you, to hold both your pain and your pleasure, and let it remind you that you are loved. Sink into not the stranger of silence, but the loving arms of silence as you breathe in and out. I offer this prayer by Cynthia Frado called Humanity's Psalm. Creator of life, source of all being, it was from the particles of the universe that you formed me. Iron and carbon and phosphorus mixed with energy, passions, and dreams. I was made in your image, says ancient scripture. Made from the colors of the rainbow, shaped with bones straight and curved, padded with flesh, flabby and lean, nearsighted, farsighted, short-sighted, long in vision. I was made in your image, says ancient scripture. Made strong and tall, short and stout, born with hands tender and fragile. Aged with hands gnarled and mature. Long nose, small nose, crooked nose. Who knows the mathematical infinitude of your genetic possibilities? I was made in your image, says ancient scripture. Made to give you love and receive love. Your passion courses through my veins, and when I touch another human being in love, matters not what gender ignites the flame. It matters only that the fire of life brings its light, the deadness of the world that cannot exist without love's transformative power. I was made in your image, says ancient scripture, but who are you? I need to know. I, who have eyes that are brown and blue and green and hazel, I, who am intellectually gifted and mentally challenged, I, who speak the languages of the world and no language at all, I, who know scientific equations and musical sonatas and know only the magic of a daily loaf of bread and the taunting sounds of racism and the mockery of my sexual orientation and the lack of respect for my aging body, I, who am all of these things and want to know more. Who are you that I am made in your image? I am, says ancient scripture. I simply am. I am the light of all being. I am the divine spark. I am the source of love. I, the most transformative power in the universe. All life is in my image. I am in you, and you are in me. I am in your siblings. They too are in me. I am in your pain and your suffering, and I am in your joy and compassion. I am light, love, and hope, and possibility. So are you. Creator of all life, source of all being, it was from the particles of the universe that you formed me. Iron and carbon and phosphorus mixed with energy, passion, and dreams. Forgive me. Forgive me that I forgot that you are everywhere. I forgot that I am everywhere. Thank you for reminding me who I am. And so this morning, in this moment of stillness, in the shared presence of our liberating faith and the whole of ourselves, we know that we can hold it all. Joys and sorrows, fears and hopes, pain, joy, faith and doubt. The very things that make us messy, whole, and holy beings. So this morning, as we bring the whole of ourselves, we do so aware that every space welcomes people at different places and who carry so much together. And so we name the things written on our hearts and in our souls. And this morning, we particularly lift up and celebrate with joy and a bit of concern a new niece for Kristen Locke, Beatrice Alexandra, born on the 12th. She joined the world a little early, but she's absolutely perfect in every way. We also hold all of those who come into this space holding joys and sorrows not yet named, but carried, shared with this community nonetheless. So place your hand over your heart. Feel that beat that connects us. Breathe in and out one more time as we carry it all together. Amen. Blessed be.
Here's a late 19th century waltz from northwestern Mississippi called the Bigby Waltz, named after that river there in northwestern Mississippi. Key of G. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Well, we just have a few great announcements today. They're always great announcements if we're giving them, but one of them is that right after this service at 1 o'clock, the new Community Corners program and ministry is doing a BYO, I'm calling it E, because it's literally bring your own everything to these picnics. Depending on which corner you live in, there's a different picnic going on, and I'll list them in a moment. But just imagine you want to go out with you and your family or just yourself on a picnic. You'll want to bring some food, you want a blanket or maybe a chair. I prefer a chair to sit in. And we just gather with one another. So, this is also in an email. I'm quite literally just reading the email that went out, so go ahead and look at that again. But I will just remind you that if you're in the northwest corner, you will go to Wallfield Park. If you're in the southeast corner, you'll go to Manhattan Park. The southwest corner, you will go to Wedgwood Park, and northeast is Dwight Lydell. And if you're not sure which one you are, you can actually click on these maps that are in the email that went out this week and get a closer look, or you can talk to myself or Reverend Greta Joe or one of the corner leaders. Next week, the 24th, we have a special guest speaking. It's going to be Dr. Randall Jelks, and many of us love having him here. This is the first of a two-part thing that he's going to be doing with us, and I am so looking forward to that, and I know many of you have actually requested, hey, can Dr. Jelks come again? So please make sure that you make it for that special service. It will be wonderful. The following week, and the following and final announcement, is October 31st is Halloween, and we've always made a deal out of, yeah, that's right. We've always made a deal out of Halloween here, but this year we're making a big deal out of it. We're going to start kind of pushing some social media and some emails your way about what Halloween's going to look like, and it should be a special, just a wonderfully special Sunday. So all you need to know is start thinking about what you're going to wear that day. I've told everybody go all out with a costume to an elegant, black and orange outfit. So what matters is that you're here with us and enjoying the special service. Friends, as we get ready to depart, I don't know what more needs to be said other than walk out of these doors today into this beautiful sunshine, knowing that you're not going to fix yourself like that. You're not going to be like, cool, I'm glad I shed all that self-worthlessness. Whew, glad Christopher said that. But the first step is understanding you're not doing this alone. Look at this beautiful community we share. As you go from this space today, I hope you feel liberated and supported to love yourself and journey on a life towards feeling the fullness of your humanity. And if you can, and when you can. You have two ministers who are happy to journey with you, but you also have an entire community that is doing the same. So from the bottom of my heart, my words of blessing and peace to you this week: go in peace, make peace. Love yourself, love one another, and look to one another if you need. Blessed be. Happy Coming Out Sunday.
Here are three fiddle tunes that I wrote that sound old: Cat Got Out Hunting, Crawdad Shuffle, and Winterberry. Here's 4 count.
Thank you.